The 86 is one of the hardest reservations to obtain in New York City right now. The small but exclusive steakhouse is situated in a historic space and has a luxurious menu filled with a variety of decadent dishes. While I didn't have a reservation, I was still able to get in and had one hell of a meal.
It's a beautiful day today here in New York City. Right now I'm at Washington Square Park, but I'd like to talk about the other day where I had a very special dinner indeed. I went to what is without a doubt one of the hottest restaurants in New York City right now, which also happens to be one of the most exclusive steakhouses in the city as well. I am talking about the 86. It's practically the sequel to the incredibly popular Corner Store. When the 86 was announced a few months ago or so, I knew it was going to be a hit, and so far that has proven true. Unfortunately, because of its popularity, getting a reservation at the restaurant is next to impossible. It's literally the hardest reservation to get in NYC right now. In fact, since the restaurant's been opened, I've never actually seen a reservation for any time slot open. However, getting a walk-in table is possible. The other day, it was absolutely freezing cold. It was one of the coldest days of the year so far, and I figured that might actually be one of the best opportunities I'll have to dine at the 86. The cold may scare away a lot of people, but not me. Fortunately, I got into the 86 and had quite the meal. So with that being said, this was my dinner at the 86.
The 86 is located in the West Village of New York City in a very nondescript looking building. In fact, the restaurant is situated just around the corner from the iconic Friends apartment building. The 86 opened their doors in September of 2025 and it was an immediate hit. Celebrities like Taylor Swift were drawn right in, which no doubt increased the hype of the restaurant. For me, however, I'm not that interested in the spot's celebrity appeal, but I am fascinated by the building's history. Long before the 86, there was Chumley's, a speakeasy that drew the likes of literary legends like F. Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway is one of my favorite authors. I've read nearly everything he has ever written, and he's somewhat of a hero to me. I've made pilgrimages to places that he once frequented, like Bar Hemingway at the Ritz in Paris, or Brasserie Lip, which was mentioned in his excellent book, A Movable Feast. There was no doubt about it, I was excited about dining at the 86. I arrived to the restaurant a bit after 3:30 and was first in line. While I only had to wait about a half hour since the restaurant opens at 4, it was a long half hour considering how cold it was. But I made friends in line, and when the 86 did open, I was lucky enough to be granted a seat at the bar. The 86 is a very small restaurant, but it's a beautiful one. Designed by the prolific Rockwell Group, the 86 features gorgeous Art Deco touches throughout the intimate space. Although the restaurant is very dark, if you wanted to see a celebrity, good luck, because seeing anything inside the restaurant is a challenge. Thankfully, my eyes adjusted, so I started exploring the menu. The 86 features a luxurious selection of modern steakhouse offerings prepared by Chef Michael Vignola. There's an intriguing selection of starters, salads, a couple of pastas, along with a tailored array of seafood. The steak, however, was what really captured my attention. There was a diverse list of cuts, and they were all labeled with the respective farms and producers they were sourced from. In addition, my bartender showed me a beautiful display of some of the day's specials. Regarding prices, they varied. On one hand, one of their steak specials had a $350 price tag, while on the other, the restaurant offered a humble prime skirt steak for $38. For the most part, with some exceptions, I thought that everything was reasonably priced. In fact, cuts like the 30-day dry-aged 14-ounce Delmonico steak was only $59. That's not only a great deal for New York City, it's pretty much a great deal for anywhere in the US. Next, I explored the beverage offerings, which included a nice selection of cocktails. Since martinis play a big part on the Corner Store's beverage menu, I thought that it would be a safe bet to choose one from the 86. As a result, I went with the bread and butter martini, which consisted of vodka, sourdough bread, butter, and fleur de sel. Now that was a solid martini. The bread and butter flavor was nicely translated to a cocktail. It was well balanced and had a good hit of alcohol to it. While I find some of these uniquely flavored martinis to be a bit gimmicky, that one wasn't gimmicky at all. I loved it. I also appreciated the nice little buttered toast-like garnish on the side, which was tasty in its own right. Before I was presented with the courses that I ordered, I was given an amuse consisting of a pickle. Now, I'm gonna be honest, before having that dish, I thought that it was gonna be kind of lame. I mean, it's a pickle, the thing that's paired with a burger or sandwich that you don't think very much of. However, after trying it, I realized that I was wrong, as it proved to be a fun way to kick off my meal. There were two kinds of toppings on the pickles, and I enjoyed them both. Each of the pickles were tasty, and they nicely awakened my palate like a good amuse should. First up was the 86 Waldorf salad, which contained organic endives, warm bacon lardons, fourme de beurre, Turkish figs, celery moons, and a crushed hazelnut vinaigrette. My first thought about the course was, damn, that's big. Photos and video don't do the dish justice. That was practically a bucket of salad. The creation was clearly meant for sharing or serving as a main course. Luckily, I brought my appetite. That salad was fantastic. I was blown away by it. It's a dish that had it all, from savory to sweet to funky and rich. It practically satisfied every flavor profile. I particularly liked the salty and sweet bacon lardons, which isn't a surprise because it's bacon. Everything else was a joy to eat as well, from the sweet figs to the funky fourme de beurre cheese. Now, like I said, it's a big serving, and Francisco, my bartender, who was excellent by the way, told me he could back it up at any time. However, I had no problem finishing that salad. I crushed it. Next up was a pleasant surprise as I was presented with two complimentary snacks, which I was incredibly grateful for. The first one was a potato croquette with French onion cream and caviar. That bite was a delight. The croquette had the perfect taste and texture. Plus, how can you go wrong with caviar, as the salty brininess it provided was wonderful. Next, I tried a sort of luxurious sausage roll topped with truffles. Once again, that was a tasty snack. The sausage had good flavor, and I appreciated the nicely toasted and rich bun it was housed in. Overall, those were two tasty treats that I was certainly grateful for. Before I received my steak, I was presented with a beautiful display of vintage steak knives from the 1970s. I was handed one of the knives, and then not long after, I received my steak and side. I decided to go with the bone-in 12-ounce center-cut Wagyu New York strip from Rosewood Ranch in Ennis, Texas. On the side, I got a creamed corn pot pie, but first, I turned my attention to the beautiful-looking steak. Now that was a satisfying steak on a multitude of levels. First off, I requested my steak to be a medium rare, and considering how dark it was, I honestly couldn't tell from a visual standpoint if that held true. However, from a taste and texture perspective, it seemed to be on the mark. The steak was very juicy and had a rich, buttery sort of flavor. The meat was heavily seasoned, and I really liked the seasoning. It really lifted the beef up. In addition, the steak was nicely seared, which imparted its own pleasant flavor. Overall, that was a good and satisfying steak, but if I had to nitpick, I would have liked a bit more character to come from the beef itself minus the seasoning. Nevertheless, that New York strip still put a smile on my face.
Everything's so fun. Oh, it's so good. I'm really enjoying this.
While I was eating my steak, I was also really enjoying my side of the creamed corn pot pie, which has seemingly become one of the restaurant's most famous offerings. When I was presented with it, there was a bit of tableside preparation to prepare the dish, which consisted of sweet corn, 2-year aged Parmesan, and a croissant layered pastry.
Oh, nice. Oh, looks great.
Visually, it certainly looked good, and I couldn't wait to dig in. Now that was a top-tier side dish. The creamy corn had a wonderful, balanced, sweet flavor. The cream was the right consistency, but the best part about that dish was getting a bit of the flaky croissant pastry into each bite. Without question, the creamed corn pot pie is a must-order. Between my steak and side, I was enjoying a wonderful meal, but I was getting full, although I still finished it all and had room for dessert. The term leftovers is not in my vocabulary. First up was a palate cleanser, which seemingly everyone receives. It was a simple lemon sorbet, which certainly hit the spot. Now, even though the sorbet does come in a sort of shell and it isn't as large as it seems, it's still fairly sizable for a complimentary palate cleanser. Next, I turned my attention to the dessert I actually ordered, which was the Hemingway pineapple. My bartender told me a nice story about how the dish is related to Hemingway, and as a Hemingway fan, I just couldn't resist. Plus, it sounded like the lightest dessert option. Now, the restaurant doesn't seem to have a physical dessert menu, rather my bartender verbally discussed the offerings with me, which included dishes like a cheesecake and a banana trifle. In terms of the Hemingway pineapple, it was very good. Appearance-wise, it looks like a simple sliced pineapple dish, but it's a bit more than that. The pineapple was compressed with blackstrap rum, vanilla, citrus, and lemongrass. Finally, it's topped with sea salt and coriander. The result was a very juicy and flavorful pineapple course that was perfect for sharing. Although, if I wasn't as full as I was, I probably would have chose one of the other desserts. Nevertheless, that was still an enjoyable dish. Overall, I really liked the 86. The place has a great atmosphere, excellent food, and top-notch hospitality. In fact, when I was about to eat my dessert, a kind woman from the restaurant explained a bit of the spot's history to me, which I really appreciated. After finishing, it was time for the bill, which totaled to $178.56, but with my tip, I spent almost $217. I certainly had a fine meal at the 86.
So that was a very satisfying meal. From food to service to the atmosphere, the 86 delivered. It was definitely worth waiting in the freezing cold for. It's nice when these super hyped up restaurants actually live up to the hype. Everyone at the restaurant was very nice. You know, with a lot of these exclusive places, you think there might be some pretentiousness, but there was absolutely none of that. From a hospitality standpoint, the 86 nailed it. In terms of the food, I really liked everything I had. My favorite dish would be the steak, but that's the easy answer, right? I think the most surprising course that I had was the salad. That was hands down the best Waldorf salad that I've ever had. Although it wasn't the most authentic version of that dish, it was so damn delicious I didn't care. I think the 86 has a really good menu. There were a number of courses on there that I wanted to try. I was really tempted to get that cheesesteak along with everything else I ordered, but even for me, there's only so much I can eat. I'll get the cheesesteak next time though, that's for sure. I feel like the 86 is similar to Fort Charles Prime Rib in the way that it's sort of conducive to overeating because it's so hard to get in, you kind of want to take advantage of it and you end up ordering way too much. Although I think I did a pretty good job when it came to ordering. I was stuffed, but I didn't have to resort to taking home leftovers. Overall, I really enjoyed the 86. It's a restaurant that delivers on all fronts. As a steakhouse, it is a must visit, but it is a lot more than just a steakhouse. Without question, I will definitely be returning to the 86.